last week, running from the heat, but the beat's coming alive. Let's get lost tonight. Lord, who's on my right?
Hello, WACOs. Welcome to another episode of Without a Country. I am Corinne Fisher. We were in the studio right now just debating whether or not we should do a live stream right now, start the show with a live stream commentary on Taylor Swift's appearance, which is premiering right now on YouTube. Please don't go to that right now if you've tuned into this. I'm sure if you would want to see that more, you're already tuned into that, so it makes sense. But yeah, she is currently live with Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce on the New Heights podcast. When I saw that she was going to be debuting the cover of her new album, I mean, she posted on Instagram, but like that she was basically doing kind of an album announcement, it reveals some kind of, promotion in conjunction with that podcast. I was just like, I just don't like this at all. This is just not what it's just not what what Taylor's, like what we go to Taylor Swift for. Obviously, I get why she's doing it. Nothing says I'm in love like making terrible career choices like this. So I actually fully at this point believe that Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are actually in love. Also, when you watch the body language between them, like more so his body language than hers, like he just looks at her in awe. I do have a theory that it's maybe the first time that he's ever dated the smart girl before. Not that Taylor is not beautiful, but she's not like, she's not over the top, sexual, curvaceous, that kind of a thing. And I'm not saying that his other girlfriends were unintelligent, but Taylor is a little dorky. Basically, she leads with it, and I am that same type. You lead with your brain and your knowledge, but you can also be super cute as she is. I mean, she's she's beautiful on these podcasts. On this podcast episode, her skin is so smooth. Her eyes are beautiful, but that's not, when I think Taylor Swift, that's not what I'm thinking of. The main thing is like, oh, that's a hot babe, And I think that's what Travis Kelce and many athletes often go for. And so, yeah, he's just when she speaks, he just kind of, I think part of it is maybe he's like, I got to look up that word later. But the other part of it is like, wow, I have like a really thoughtful, complex human being here. And then for Taylor, I think the appeal is, number one, I think she really enjoys Travis Kelce's golden retriever energy. If you guys know the black cat golden retriever energy, if you're putting it, I have black cat energy, which is like, get the hell away from me. And people, there's many people who really respond to that energy. But Travis Kelce has golden retriever energy, which is like, yeah, man, let's go. What can I do for you? Are we going to play? I love it. And like, I've had a boyfriend, I have a boyfriend right now who has golden retriever energy, and it's extremely pleasant. I get it. So I think this might be, traditionally Taylor has dated a lot of tortured artists, a lot of people who are like, just like writhing with pain as they try to get out the next lyric or try to get to the heart of the character in this script. And that has its own appeal. But I do think that's an appeal that wears off very quickly once you're past your 20s. So Taylor, and also Taylor is, this is the first time Taylor is dating someone who's really, really like traditionally good looking. Like I think all her boyfriends were attractive in their own way, but this is like Americana jock, juicy, beefy, good looking. It's a type of good looking that she hasn't dated before, and I think there's a novelty in that. And it's also the kind of attractiveness that society notices more. And even though maybe that's like not her number one choice for what looks, I don't know her. There is something fun about dating someone conventionally attractive just because of how society reacts. And we know that Taylor is a person who cares no matter what she says, very much about what other people think. And so that would be especially appealing to someone like her. And that's just like, this is my analysis that no one asked for, but sometimes actually, but I would say just no one asked for it, but actually a lot of people did ask for this. And were very interested in my thoughts on this podcast appearance. So yeah, obviously it gave me the ick, but we've all done things for people that we were in love with that, you know, is not maybe what our fans wanted and doesn't really align with our brand or our art. But, you know, I think she's doing it to help Travis's podcast, obviously. And, you know, that's what love is. I've given many men chances and opportunities in their careers that they had not earned, did not deserve, and were not good enough for because of love. And, you know, that's part of the reason that I will refuse to bring boyfriends on, you know, tours that I do anymore, or let really men feature for me at all. Because I had to stop myself from doing that. And if I just made a blanket rule, well, then, you know, it's not you, boyfriend. It's just, this is a rule that I have. And if I create some sort of like a code of ethics for myself, I will usually always follow it. I mean, that doesn't mean that I'm never going to give any boyfriends opportunities. I certainly will, because you got to take a chance on love every time, right? But I just stopped making it like a core part of anything. So Taylor can do whatever the hell she wants, you know? I want to talk more about the Life of a Showgirl cover. I'm excited for it. I think the art, where was it? The art is really cool. I like the direction she's going, and I like this green. I like that it's like a little sexy, but not crazy sexy, because, you know, it's like a nice reflection of who she is. The title is a little bit like, I feel like we've done this before. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, Pamela Anderson just did a freaking movie that is almost exactly this aesthetic. And like Life of a Showgirl, it's like, okay, I understand as a performer, like, yes, like constantly performing, constantly having to be on, constantly being in the public eye. It's very hard. Obviously, if I feel that way as like Corinne Fisher, podcaster, the arguably most famous woman in the world, certainly has a much more wild experience with this. And, you know, but, you know, just in like today's world with everything that's going on, then the level of seriousness that we're dealing with, I feel like people aren't very receptive to, like, you know, it's hard being in show business. Like, that's kind of run its course. I am interested in it. I was, you know, as you guys know, I'm very interested in the concept of fame. I always have been. But I don't know if, you know, seemingly that's what she's going for here. So it's a little bit like been done, all this stuff. But because of who Taylor appeals to, you know, she appeals to the masses. She does appeal to like young girls, to basic bitches, you know, even though I think that some of her music, especially her last album, is not basic at all. But I also think that's why the last album that she put out didn't get the reception from her fans that she probably wanted. People seemed almost confused by her last album. I think besides 1989, it was her strongest work because it actually was so complex. But I know a lot of people really didn't feel the same way about that. So, and like, I can't even remember it's the Tortured Poets Department, right? I was like, I can't even remember what it was called. Is that it? Yeah. Your mic is on, Mike. I hear whatever conversation you're having. But yeah, so yeah, that Tortured Poets Department is, I think it's a real masterpiece. Still nothing will beat 1989. But for Life of a Showgirl, I read that she is going back to the producers that she worked with on 1989. So I'm really excited about that. But also it tells me that Taylor very much listens to what her fans say, and noted that Tortured Poets Department did not have the reception that she wants, because I do think she's a really talented artist. And I think that she creates genuinely mostly, but I also think that she wants mainstream success, and she will alter her art to what the fan base wants to get those accolades, to get nominated for that Grammy. And I'm not saying that negatively, you know. I like, you know, that just is who she is, and I just don't think at this point it's changing. You know, she's 35 years old. The track listing is number 1, The Fate of Ophelia, 2, Elizabeth Taylor. So 3, Opalite. So she's going to be doing some kind of like biopic songs, I'm guessing, where she's, you know, writing like a little concept pieces. 4, Father Figure, 5, Eldest Daughter, 6, Ruin the Friendship, 7, Actually Romantic, 8, Wishlist, 9, Would, 10, Canceled. That word is so over. I can't even believe she named a song that. That's the thing. That's how you know Taylor Swift is for basic bitches, because she's playing with concepts that are like kind of old. It's kind of like when you go to, you know, from New York City or Los Angeles, and you're going on a road trip and driving through, you know, a smaller town, and their local radio station are playing songs that you bopped to 6 months ago and are actually over. That's the energy here. 11 is Honey, and 12 is The Life of a Showgirl, which that song features Sabrina Carpenter, which I'm super excited about. I love Sabrina Carpenter. And yeah, and Taylor looks amazing. These pictures are classy yet sexy, but yeah, their overall like aesthetic, even like looking at this Life of a Showgirl cover a little bit more, it is kind of giving Y2K, which is back. But you know, I don't know. I'm more excited for the music. Taylor Swift's aesthetic is never really going to do it for me. But I do think she's an incredibly talented songwriter, and I love that she can fill, you know, stadiums for people actually listening to what she says. And I think that's something that we need to continue to value, especially in women. Kind of, you know, throwing back to the OnlyFans discussion I had, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but really, you know, valuing women for what they say and not just merely what they look like. So that's why I don't, you know, do I love Taylor Swift's aesthetic? No, but I also don't really give a shit. I wouldn't care if she was the ugliest woman on the planet. I would still really value her music and love it. And I do, and I'm excited for the tracks. Although, I mean, I cannot tell you how much I love Tortured Poets Department. And I know that is not an opinion shared by many people, but I think maybe give it a different listen. If you didn't love it, go into it with go into it with different expectations. I don't want to say with no expectations, but go into it with a more open mind and different expectations. And I just think there are some really, really, really masterful songs on there. And, you know, we want our artists to be growing up. We don't want them to remain stagnant just to continually help us reach a time in our lives. Our artists should be growing with us, and I think that album really speaks to that. All right, also saw Katy Perry this week. If you just want like a fun, ridiculous time, apparently her Lifetimes tour, which is just a blatant ripoff of the Eras tour, but I mean, she can do it because she also has had so many albums out. She's been around for a long time. All these people that we enjoyed when we were younger are now, you know, full-blown adults and have a discography that they can share with us. And it was so much fun. I saw her at Madison Square Garden. I went in a full NASA jumpsuit like the one that she wore to space. I had the time of my life. The energy was so light and fun. She's a really great live vocalist. She said, I'm not a great dancer, so she does a lot of like gymnastics type aerial, like circusy bits in the show. She's in banging shape. I mean, this woman, she's 40 years old. Which is not old, you know, which is something I learned. It's not just because I'm turning 40 later this year, but it is not why I'm saying that. But it's just really keeps dawning on me how angry I am at society for selling me as, you know, a 20-year-old, that 40 was the end. 40, you're going to be so old. 40, you're going to look disheveled. You're not going to be sexy. You're not going to feel energetic. You're not going to have fucking hopes and dreams. Like, that's how 40 is sold. And I am so pissed because, you know what, maybe I could have lived my life in a less frantic manner, maybe I wouldn't know how to fit in so much into the past 20 years of my life, and I could have lived at a more peaceful pace if I didn't think it was, all going to be over at 40. And it is such a myth, and it is such a tool, I think, that is used by, again, I hate saying this because it doesn't mean anything anymore, but truly a tool of the patriarchy to scare us into making sure to lock it down and get married. If you want to have babies, you do have to have babies around or by this time if you haven't frozen your eggs. But but that's certainly to scare us into getting married or earlier, because God help us, the worst thing that can happen to a woman is that she can no longer be hot. I mean, stop. It's actually so infuriating. So just if you're listening and you're younger than 40 and you're a woman, it is such a big lie. I'm astounded at what I used to think the concept of 40 was and what I now know it to be. They are completely different things. And it is a real disservice to women that we sell it the way that we do. All right. Hello. Welcome to the show. That was a little bit of a different start, but hey, whatever. We do whatever the fuck we want on this show. And we'll do chapters. So if you want to, skip over the Taylor Swift part, you could you can skip over the Taylor Swift part. A couple housekeeping things, as I talked about last week, and you've heard me talking about on my Instagram stories. I am in the running to have my panel be featured at the South by Southwest Film Music Comedy Festival in Austin, Texas, early next year. Really exciting. A great opportunity, an opportunity that I've wanted for a long time. But there's a lot of the panels get voted on by the community, which is just any person. You don't have to be even, planning on attending the festival. But there's a link right and we'll include it in the show notes. But the easiest way to access it, especially if you're watching this live, just take a moment right now. Grab your phone, go to Philanthropy Gal, my Instagram, on your phone. I also have it in my X bio, and it's there too. I'm trying to think of what other bios it's in, but just go to my link tree, and there's a thing that says, vote for my panel at South by Southwest. Click on that. You'll have to create an account, which I know is annoying. It takes 2 seconds, though. It's just your email and your name, and then click the heart next to Clown Kings of Culture. Sorry, I didn't name it. I name it. It's Clown Culture Kings, whatever. It's a little bit of a bumpy title. Again, I didn't name it, but you'll just click the heart next to it. It'll turn red, and then you voted, and I appreciate you so much. And you can vote through August 25th. So that's super helpful. And then, as I've been teasing, I'll have the link soon. I know I say that every week, but I just had a lot of stuff that I had to get done. And I finally have the art, though, for Gash, October 22nd in LA at the Comedy Store. Just save that night in your calendar and make sure you buy a ticket as soon as I announce it. That'll also be on Instagram, the announcement. And then real quick before we get into our big stories, lots of interesting stuff this week. I just wanted to recommend to you Marc Maron's new special. It's on, it's an HBO special. It's called Panicked. Marc Maron, for me, he's not one of my favorite comedians, but he's not one of my favorite comedians. For me, he's very hit or miss. Sometimes what he's saying really resonates with me, and sometimes it's just way too neurotic for me. So, but I think he's done something really special with his new special, which is he's found a way to criticize both the right and the left, kind of like this show. That's why I'm mentioning it on this show, without being annoying or self-righteous. And, he self-admittedly has a very Whole Foods leftist, overly socially and politically involved audience. And I can tell that he's had certainly annoyances caused by that audience, as anyone on the left has. When you have a very active and socially and politically involved audience, and I know because I have one too, they do at various points in your career end up attacking you because that is what we're taught to do on the left. And it's annoying, and it makes you really analyze the strategy that the left uses. And so you see firsthand that Marc has been through those experiences, and it's very interesting. But it did not turn him into an edgelord like it did many other comedians. Instead, he found a real interesting way to, without calling Trump something hacked like, Orange Cheeto Man, he found a fun way to really, pick apart and analyze and criticize both the right and the left and the mistakes that we've made. And, his whole special isn't political, but I would say like the first 20 minutes are really, really like groundbreaking. Like it's just, I think it's going to signify a real change in the direction of comedy specials at this point in history, and a real kind of correction or evening out from what we've seen with this edgelord comedy the past several years that has, if you're a comedy fan, that has truly changed the entire comedy scene in Austin, Texas, and created one, but also now is basically like creating all these like mini copycat edgelord comedians who are trying to be the next, Tony Hinchcliffe or Theo Von or whoever. I don't even call, like Theo Von, I'm hesitant to call an edgelord. I think he has a genuine curiosity and just is born in a different part of the country, which we don't see a lot, which is why I do think that we need, people to be famous from both the right and the left. Like it's a conversation we had on Guys We Fucked with when we interviewed Josh Wolf this week. That episode will be coming out soon. But I like that Sydney Sweeney is a Republican and she's famous. I don't like that she's a Republican because I agree with Republican views, but I think it's important that our celebrities reflect the culture in which we live. And so if all our celebrities are liberals, well, that's just going to create the animosity towards liberals that already exists. There should be MAGA celebrities. And I know that's a weird thing to say, and I don't think there should be MAGA celebrities because we should be putting people who have those values on a pedestal. But I think, number one, we should stop following just whatever celebrities say. It's an idiotic way to live. These are not specialists in politics or social issues. I mean, some are, but most are not. Sydney Sweeney does not claim to be such a person. And I think that, especially the fact that she is a woman and young and a Republican, I think it's interesting. And to me, it's like better out in the open than hiding somewhere. Let's keep tabs on her. But again, our celebrities should reflect our culture. I think it's a weird perspective to be like, only people who agree with what is, in quotes, good and right should be famous. Well, that's not the reason she's famous. She's not famous for being good and right or bad and wrong. She's famous for being an actor and for having huge tits, which being famous for having huge tits is certainly another American issue in celebrity that we can talk about ad nauseum. More of a Guys We Fuck topic. But again, you have two choices. Like, celebrities do not exist without a fan base. To be a celebrity, one must have a fan base. So if you don't like her, the worst thing you could do is start talking about her because you're giving her more publicity. I don't know when we will learn that the fastest way to get rid of a celebrity you don't like is to not mention them at all. That's how you do it. Do not tweet about them, not even with the little asterisk. I know you think you're being really coy putting the asterisk so that they can't find themselves when they search for themselves on X. Just don't talk about them at all, unless you think they're a real danger, okay? Unless you think it's a person who is an actual danger to society. I know some people didn't like the American Eagle ad. I think it was, I saw it. I didn't think it was that crazy. I just thought it was like something that, people were going to dig too deep into. and I'm someone that, Hitler would have killed during the Holocaust as a reminder. So that's how unaffected I was by that. But I don't know. I just stopped talking about her. And I think it's really like taking our mind off much more important issues. And so I'll move on right now. We don't even need to go at it. I have a new little segment that I created for this week. It's called Mass Shooting Roundup. This is brought to you by ChatGPT. We have this problem on the show a lot. It's like, obviously we're a show that goes over the most important news stories of the week. And I don't want to become so immune to mass shootings that I stop mentioning them. I don't think that's good. But I also think that for many of these mass shootings, there's not really a story to share with you. There's really nothing to discuss beyond, yet another person went, crazy with a gun and murdered people in this country. And it happens so much here, and other countries don't have the same problem. So, I just kind of thought, let's just list them out. And as a reminder, the Gun Violence Archive defines a mass shooting as 4 or more people shot. They don't have to be killed. They can be injured or killed, and that number of people must exclude the shooter. So 4 people excluding the shooter. The shooter is not included in that number, and it must all occur in a single incident. So in the past 7 days in America, it gave me top, but I asked for all the mass shootings. ChatGPT gave me top, but they listed 4. So there was the Baltimore porch shooting. While sitting outside eating, a group was targeted by gunfire. 1 man, 38, died after surgery. 5 others were wounded, including a 5-year-old girl with a hand injury. This occurred Saturday evening at Spalding and Queensberry Avenues in Baltimore. Investigators believe the victims were targeted. Shooter and weapon still at large. Number 2, Times Square shooting right here in good old NYC. What happened? Gunfire erupted at 1:20 a.m. in Times Square, injuring 3 people. No life-threatening injuries reported. Details say that the scene was chaotic with bystanders fleeing. 1 individual is in police custody for questioning. No charges filed yet. 3. The Fort Stewart military base shooting. This one's very interesting. In Georgia, what happened? On a U.S. Army base, Sergeant Cornelius Radford opened fire on fellow soldiers using a personal handgun. 5 soldiers were wounded. All are expected to fully recover. Details raises questions about the policy banning personal carry of firearms on military posts. Yeah, I'll say that's something that should have probably been looked into. The shooter is detained. The motive is still under investigation. And then the 4th comes to us from Anaconda, Montana, the Owl Bar mass shooting. What happened? This is not the past 7 days, so ChatGPT didn't really listen to my prompt 100%, but, it is a machine. What happened on August 1st at the Owl Bar, a 45-year-old man entered and fatally shot 4 individuals, 1 bartender and 3 patrons with a rifle. No one else was injured. Details, the suspect fled, oddly, in his underwear and was captured a week later on August 8th. I guess that's why it's including it, because the capture was in the past week. So that right there is your mass shooting roundup of the week. So we covered it. You know about it. You know where they happen. You know how many happen. I think that we need to not become immune to shootings until we figure out as a society what the hell to do. But again, there's nothing really interesting in the story, like nothing to really politicize or talk about. I know we'll figure it out, though. All right, moving on to Enemy of the State. This is something that I actually had on the Google Doc last week, but we had such a chock-full show that I believe I ended up skipping over it. And then I know Mike was really interested in going over this story, and then also WACO Jessica emailed me about it in the past 7 days. So this week, our enemy of the state is going to go to Utah Senator Stuart J. Adams.
Enemy of the state.
And this is a very interesting story. I'm going to take the main piece from the Salt Lake Tribune. I'm just really feeling like I'm into local sources lately. Utah's Senate president prompted law change that helped a teen charged with child rape. The case may reopen debate among lawmakers about how to respond when older teens have sex with kids too young to consent. Last year, an 18-year-old Utahn, is that how you guys say it? It's Utah with an N after it. I guess it's Utahn. Was staring at the potential of years in prison, accused of having sex with a 13-year-old. Plea bargain negotiations were at an impasse. Then the Utah legislature, based on an initial suggestion from Senate President J. Stewart Adams, I thought it was Stuart J. Adams. All right, whatever. Changed the law. 2 months later, prosecutors offered the 18-year-old, who is related to Adams, a plea deal. The teen would plead guilty to reduced charges, face no additional jail time beyond a week already served, and would not have to register as a sex offender. The new law was not made retroactive, and the teenager was not charged with the new lower-level crime it created. But in court hearings, the judge, the prosecutor, and defense attorney Cara Tonjaro, who helped draft the bill language that was adopted by the legislature, all acknowledged it was pivotal to resolving the charges against the 18-year-old. You saw the legislative change, Tangaro told Judge Rita Cornish at sentencing. We all agree that's not retroactive, but the government did change their offer based on that. The change in the law created a new option for prosecutors in narrow circumstances, specifically in cases that involve 13-year-old victims. 17-year-olds who have sex with 13-year-olds face a third-degree felony charge of unlawful sexual activity. The new law now allows prosecutors to file that same charge against an 18-year-old if they are an enrolled high school student. And this is an interesting conversation because, like, I think it's, like, weird, but I think it's weird, like, pretty crazy to be having sex with someone who's in middle school if you're in late high school. But 30, I'm trying to think, how old was I when I started? 14, 15. I guess I was 13 for only like the first like month of high school. Cause I'm thinking like if I like had sex with like a senior when I was a freshman, like I don't think that's crazy. I don't think you should be a registered sex offender for life for doing that. And I know that's like not everyone agrees with that. I also don't love like, I don't know. All right, there's a lot of things. I think this is like a pretty complex article. Anyway, okay. But the main point of this article is not really like what we think about the age of the consent. The main thing is that people that we elect, or people that are, chosen to represent us and help us and make decisions that will make our lives better, don't give a shit about us personally and are just trying to help themselves, their friends, and their family. That's, to me, what this article is about. The sexual stuff is kind of a different conversation. Previously, as adults, 18-year-old high school students who had sex with a 13-year-old could face a charge of child rape, a first-degree felony. A conviction on that charge generally requires registration as a sex offender, while a conviction on the newly created lesser charge does not. Which like, again, I don't like, because this has actually been a problem with like things like Megan's Law and stuff, and like sex offenders in general. Like if two teenagers, especially two teenagers, like both in the same high school have sex, I actually do not think that the older one should be a registered sex offender. Call me crazy. I don't think that's fair. I think like maybe there could be some kind of a different thing, but like to say that you're like a sex offender or like some kind of a pedophile for if you're a senior having sex with a freshman, I think is pretty crazy. In a statement to the Salt Lake Tribune, Adams said the case stemmed from a serious mistake, but he was surprised by the severity of the charges. a serious mistake, like what, like they're trying to blame it on the girl. So they said she lied about her age, that were initially filed. The original charges were 2 counts of child rape. Yeah, and I don't think when you're a teenager having sex with a 13-year-old should be called child rape. And 2 counts of child sodomy, all first-degree felonies, carrying the possibility of 25 years to life in prison and a requirement to register as a sex offender. I do think that's too much. I think that's too much. I don't think you should be going to prison really at all, most likely. Again, I'd have to hear it case by case. The Leighton Republican emphasized, and I know a lot of you are going to disagree with me. Please call into the show if you want. But this is something long before this article that I had thought about, had conversations about, read articles about, and I thought it was pretty wild. The Leighton Republican emphasized that the new law was not retroactive and said he did not intend for it to impact the case. His intent was to help future students. Some have suggested this change was made to benefit the case I was made aware of involving the high school senior. That is simply not true, he said. While the sponsor of the bill was aware of the case, I did not request the legislation and did not intervene or give input on the drafting of the bill. The mother of the junior high school victim, so middle school, said in an interview, which is just like, that is kind of just like, what's wrong with you that you're in high school and you're having, and like, you know, if you was like a freshman having sex with someone like, you know, from 8th grade, maybe they like had been together in middle school and then the one goes on a year earlier, like that I can understand. But you're a senior in high school and you're having sex with an 8th grader, like what's wrong with you? Like, it's like, huh? The mother of the junior high school victim said in an interview with the Tribune that she was shocked to learn about the change to the law. It was out of nowhere, she said. I felt like I was punched in the gut. She believes her child was an afterthought in both the legislative debate and the handling of the criminal case. I feel like a law is the law regardless of who you are, but that wasn't what was going on here, which is a crazy statement if this woman has lived in America more than, 2 days, because the law certainly is not the law regardless of who you are, for many reasons. If you're white, it's different. If you're rich, it's different. If you're a celebrity, it's different. If you know someone, it's different. If you're a woman, it's different than if you're a man, depending on what the crime is. Like, lady, come on. I feel like the 18-year-old just got special treatment and nobody was going to say anything about it. The Tribune generally does not name victims of sexual assaults, and it is not naming the 13-year-old's mother to protect the child's identity. It is also not identifying the 18-year-old, since the Tribune typically does not cover such cases. The mother of the 13-year-old victim agreed to speak on the record about the case. The case highlights a larger issue that legal systems nationwide continue to grapple with. How should the criminal justice system respond when an older teen has sex with someone younger who cannot legally consent? I think there should be like an age, like a number of years bracket. If you are X amount years older than the person, and that person is underage, then you can get charged with a crime. 18, 13 is probably around where we're going to go. We're probably going to go around 5 years, right? I get it. But again, if then, like me, you started high school when you were 13, and if I was a freshman and had sex with a senior, I don't think that's crazy. In Utah, children under the age of 14 cannot consent. For older minors, the laws regarding consent vary based on the age of the person who is having sexual contact with them, provided that person does not use force or coercion. For prosecutors to use the new lower charge in cases involving a 13-year-old victim, evidence must show the teenagers in a case mutually agreed to the activity, even though a 13-year-old cannot give legal consent. Pam Vickery, executive director of the Utah Juvenile Defender Attorneys, said it's not unusual for 18-year-olds who are still in high school to socialize with their student peers, but when it comes to sexual contact with younger peers, they can be prosecuted as adults. I mean, you definitely shouldn't be having sex with middle schoolers when you're a senior in high school, and you probably shouldn't be hanging out with them either, because I really just don't even know how they would end up in your friend group. Across the country, in the space of juvenile justice, everyone is struggling with what to do with situations involving people who are too young to consent to sexual behavior, because you're putting yourself in jeopardy, not just for a sex crime, but also like if you're using alcohol and you're using drugs and if you're hanging out and you're a fucking senior in high school, you're probably doing those things. So just like, just let them hang out with someone younger. In 2023, the victim's mother said her 8th grader mentioned in a random conversation, which is in quotes and is such an 8th grader thing to say, that the 18-year-old had sex with the child. That's an interesting random thing to bring up. I just told the child, you understand what this is. They're an adult and you're not old enough to make these decisions, the mother said. Her child wanted me to report it, she said, and she contacted police. Okay. Well, if she brought it up casually, I would like to see like, because I'm like, again, I do not want to like start victim blaming and stuff, but like, if this seems to be mutually agreed upon sex, right? I know a 13-year-old can't consent. I understand that, but. If she's like bringing it up in a random conversation, doesn't seem like she's bringing it up under duress. Perhaps, it does seem like this could be an instance where like her mom got pissed at her and then she goes, yeah, you're right. That was wrong. You should report it. Again, I hate to even bring that up because I think so often men think this happens like all the time and it doesn't, but this is different. This is not like a rape case. This is an age of consent case. A friend of the 18-year-old also reported the allegation to police hours later, according to court records. And like that's the part of it where I go, okay, if a friend of yours is reporting this, that's a different story. I now really need more details because what's going on here? The 18-year-old was arrested and charged. Plea negotiations on the 4 first-degree felonies filed against the teen dragged on for months, according to court records and statements in hearings. That changed after the 2024 legislative session. Ultimately, the new law that led to the plea deal was just a few lines included in SB 213, a sweeping 49-page bill sponsored by Senate Majority Leader Kirk Cullimore, Republican Cottonwood Heights. It adjusted a slew of criminal sentences based almost entirely on months of meetings between lawmakers, the Utah Commission on Criminal and Juvenile Justice, the Utah Sentencing Commission, and other stakeholders. According to the Sentencing Commission Director, Dan Strong, the language dealing with 18-year-old high school students was not among the recommendations of the working group. Cullimore said Adams had confided with him about the charges against the relative and asked him to look into the issue. Cullimore, who is a lawyer but doesn't practice criminal law, said he consulted with a few criminal attorneys, including Tangaro. She said the issue is that normally prosecutors in these types of cases would consider the circumstances and offer pleas, and she said for whatever reason, this prosecutor is not, Cullimore said. And I said, what would your ideal be in something like that? Davis County prosecutor Tamara Vasquez declined to comment on the plea negotiations. Yeah, I'd be interested to hearing those too. Cullimore said there was no intention that the change to the law would impact the pending case. We just thought it would be the best policy. Cullimore said that Tangaro drafted the language that would allow the lower level charge to be filed against 18-year-olds still in high school, and he shared it with legislative attorneys. The bill passed without much attention paid to the provision, and Governor Spencer Cox signed it into law on March 19, 2024. Tangaro, who recently finished a year-long stint as president of the Utah State Bar, so easy to get, done, said that in her 24 years in the law, she often worked with legislators to change or tweak statutes when a case arises that highlights unintended consequences or overly harsh or unfair outcomes, right? And I do agree with that. Again, I think the problem here is actually, and I know you're going to disagree, is actually to me not the changes that were made, but it's why the changes why the changes were made, and the fact that if this case had involved just a regular American citizen who didn't have someone, a family friend who was a senator, they would have just had to pay for their crime. That's the problem here. That's the issue to me. And I know that's not the issue that everyone sees in here, but that's the issue to me. In her written response to the Tribune, Tangaro said the change to the statute was small and was not retroactive and did not directly affect this client's case. Adams said that he did not request the legislation and did not intervene or give input on the drafting of the bill. He said no other legislator, to his knowledge, knew of his connection to the issue. Thus, that case could not have influenced their decision to vote in favor or against the bill. I'm sure this is half lies. Cullimore likewise said Adams was aware of the language in the bill but did not weigh in on it. He didn't talk to anybody about it, and I didn't either, Cullimore said. Representative Carrie-Ann Lisenby, Republican Clearfield, the House sponsor of the bill, said she was not aware of the impetus of the change for 18-year-olds or Tangaro's role in crafting the language. The legislation passed near the end of the session when bills move quickly. Believe me, the placement was on purpose. They always do shit at a certain time when they don't want anyone to pay attention to it. We just talked about that concept last week. She said, but she now opposes that change to the law. All of my other work in the criminal justice space underscores that if I had known that the proposed language was intended to potentially lower the penalty for the crime of rape of a child, again, I don't love that language. I would have held or amended the bill to remove that section, she said. I will immediately add a repeal of that language to a bill file I have open. Quote, then now it says in bold, once you're an adult, you take responsibility. In July 2024, Tangaro and Vasquez informed Judge Michael Doreda, who at the time was presiding over the case, that they had reached a plea deal. Your Honor may not be aware, but there was actually a legislative change this last session, which changed some of the things with this case, Tangaro told Doreda, according to the audio of the hearing. Based on that, we came to a resolution. That resolution was that the 18-year-old would plead guilty to aggravated assault, a second-degree felony, and 3 counts of sexual battery, each a Class A misdemeanor. Doreda cut short the hearing and called both attorneys back into his chambers. 2 weeks later, the judge recused himself from the case, and it was reassigned to Cornish. A court spokesperson said that Doreda is unable to comment beyond the written recusal order. That order, which is 2 lines long, only states that Doreda was recusing himself and the case would be reassigned. He did not receive pressure, political or otherwise, to recuse, the court spokesperson said. In August, at the sentencing hearing, Vasquez told the court that the victim's mother, who did not attend, wanted the judge to impose additional jail time. They feel really defeated through this entire process, and I think that's why they're not here today. I just want to express to the court this is not out of disrespect for the process. It's just that the process really, in their eyes, has failed them, Vasquez told the judge. She just feels like there's no protection for the innocence of her child, and that there's a disregard for how it really has affected them. Vasquez continued, they feel that there hasn't been adequate consequences for the underlying conduct. I need a little bit more information about how it affected them, because it doesn't seem to me in what we relayed. And I'm going to have you comment on this in a second, Michael, because I know you're excited about this. I just want to finish the article about how it affected her. Again, I don't like how you react. As the younger party, it's really your choice. And I do genuinely think that there are 13-year-olds who can have sex with an 18-year-old, and it's going to be fine. And I think there are 13-year-olds who are going to have sex with an 18-year-old, and they're going to go, whether it's then or 10 years later, and they're going to go, man, I that was fucked up, and I really didn't realize it at the time how fucked up that was. To me, this just lacks a little bit of clarity. Cornish, it's not like I would sign up to defend this guy in court or on rooting for the 18-year-old or anything, but I just Cornish acknowledged the challenging, because the way this article has been circulating makes it seem like this senator's relative was a pedophile and he got him out of pedophile charges. And when you read it, that's just not at all what happened here, and that aggravates me. Cornish acknowledged the challenging nature of cases in which teenagers have sex with one another without allegations or force or coercion, and said that the legislature's decision to change the law was indicative of that fact. But the judge said the younger teen was legally incapable of giving consent to sex, period, full stop. Again, it's why would you even be interested? But okay. I mean, you know, ultimately, the judge accepted the terms of the plea deal and sentenced the older teenager to no jail time beyond the week served after the initial arrest and the 420 days the teen spent on home confinement. The changes to the levels of the charges meant the teen would not have to register as a sex offender, a requirement that Tangaro said in court had been a sticking point because prosecutors had held firm on that point. Cornish ordered the teen to serve 4 years on probation, complete sex offender treatment, pay a $1,500 fine, and perform 120 hours of community service. You know, it's like I would just keep an eye on this guy. Is there some kind of a deal where we go, just don't have sex with anyone under 18 ever again? Like, just don't do it. Adam said the fact that the plea included a second-degree felony rather than the third-degree felony allowed by the revised law shows the legislation did not determine the outcome of the case. In Utah and as a society, we believe in accountability, redemption, and second chances. Adam said in his statement, this policy change in SB 213 reflects those values. It is unfortunate that some have mischaracterized the situation without having all the facts. In her written response to the questions about the case, Tangaro said her client was deemed to be a very low risk to reoffend. Well, let's hope not after all this. Then that guy's just a frickin' idiot. And fully complied with the legal process, accepted the consequences, and continues to live with the serious and lasting impact of their actions. The victim's mother said she regrets not attending the sentencing and speaking against what she saw as lenient punishment, but it was just one blow after another, and I was just tapped out. I would like to have said, I have kids. I know this was a mistake, but there are consequences to actions, she said. It's changed both of you, but once you're an adult, you take responsibility. Okay. Vasquez declined to comment on the change to the law or the outcome of the case beyond what is in the court record. I'm not involved in the making of the laws. I just enforce them, she said. A changing legal landscape. Vickery, the juvenile defense, and Again, I understand that legally once you're 18, you're an adult, but I would argue that it's very hard to be an adult when you're still in high school. Having to navigate the real world, and I would argue that the real world doesn't even start actually until you graduate college for most people because the structure of school is incredibly helpful and you know, I think almost does a disservice to most people because then you graduate at like 21 years old and you've never really navigated the real world without the structure and help of a school. And it makes it so much more difficult and you're just like absolutely slapped in the face with it. But like if you're still in high school, like I don't actually think you're an adult. Like what's the difference? You just like, you can vote. A changing legal landscape. Vickery, unless it was someone who was like held back and then, you know, those people love to then turn into predators. Just like people who stay back for like 5 years. I think everyone's high school had some like guy who just kept hanging around, and you're like, are you failing on purpose? Because you can only get high school girls. A changing legal landscape. Vickery, the juvenile defense attorney, said the Davis County case points to larger issues in how the criminal justice system deals with young adults. Since 2017, Utah law has tried to strike a balance by having graduated levels of severity for what is termed unlawful adolescent sexual activity, which I think makes sense, as long as it does not involve force, of course, or other allegations that would support charges like rape, sodomy, or sexual assault. The sodomy one is interesting. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you know, like the sodomy is just like, so we're just outlawing, like they're just like talking about like outlawing anal, like as if it's okay, but like that's like crazy against gay people, but whatever. For example, a 17-year-old who has sexual contact with a 13-year-old could be charged with a third-degree felony version of that charge, while the same act with a 14-year-old would be a Class B misdemeanor.
Clarification, oral is also sodomy.
Yeah, no, I saw that, but I was like, most people think of anal when it's sodomy, and like that would be, if you're having like, you know, genital to genital intercourse, that would be the only way that two gay men would be able to have it. And so it just feels like wildly homophobic, like, but you know, par for the course. What it really raises to me when it comes to the 18 to 24-year-olds, should we be treating them differently? Vickery said. I mean, 24 and 18. this is my problem. So this is how we do the brackets. The bracket is 18 to 24. 18 and 24 are crazy different. 18 and 21 are even really different. I don't know. Okay. We're going to talk about like age for so many reasons this week. I mean, we had a 19-year-old this week with the Anna Delvey leaving bunny rabbits from the bunny chute just abandoning them in a park in a bunny carrier that they which they thought how are the bunnies going to open the bunny carrier, you fucking idiot. And the person who apparently left that was a 19-year-old who was working on this photo shoot, and like they made a public statement saying, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm 19, and when these bunnies became my responsibility, I just didn't know what to do. I'm only 19." And so that pissed me off too, because I go, when you're 19 years old, you know that you shouldn't, when you have living creatures, leave them in a closed carrier in the middle of in the middle of a park. You know that they're not going to survive that. A 10-year-old would know that. Okay. Anyway, but. Well, I guess my point is 18 and 19-year-olds are fucking idiots. But the research shows is that the population, developmentally, brain-wise, they're at the same level of maturity as a 17-year-old, but all of a sudden we're drawn to this arbitrary line of 18, which I actually really do agree with. I think we just maybe forget how young and dumb you still are when you're 18. Paul Cassell, a University of Utah law professor, and retired judge. Because I literally started dating a 26-year-old the second I turned 18. The second I turned 18. I think I might have met him when I was 17 and then turned 18 2 weeks later. But do I think that he should we didn't have sex until I was 18, but do I think this person should go to jail? Do I think this person was a predator? No. I don't know. Paul Cassell, a University of Utah law professor and retired judge, said lines regarding age often are drawn out of, and in fact, I'm actually going to, and this is my personal experience, and I don't think this is true for everyone, but I'm actually going to go even further to say this. I ended up dating that person for 5 years, the longest boyfriend I ever had, but I'm even going to go on to say that me having sex for the first time at 18 with someone who was 26 actually made for such a much better sexual experience for the first time. I'm not talking about pleasure. I'm talking about that this was a person who respected sex in a way that I don't think many 18-year-old boys do. Men, I guess we're supposed to be do. And I am often think of the fact that I feel so lucky to have been introduced by an adult to sex when I was just entering an adulthood, someone who had spent more time there. And also I don't know. Then there's the mental, difference between men and women at that age, which I don't want to do anything that's going to put more burden onto women than we already have. But Paul Cassell, a University of Utah law professor and retired judge, said lines regarding age often are drawn out of administrative convenience. Some 17-year-olds, for example, may be knowledgeable and capable of voting, but deciding those circumstances on a case-by-case basis is untenable. When it comes to sexual conduct, lawmakers have created a bright line that is clear and easy to enforce, he said. But Cassell said he can see the logic in treating 18-year-olds in high school similarly to their younger peers and classmates. From a victim's point of view, I think hard and fast rules may be more victim protective, he said. I don't think we should be getting into a debate about how mature was this 13-year-old. Yeah, I don't think we should engage in that because it can very quickly lead to victim blaming. Yes, love that. Roughly 30 states have laws on the books intended to take into consideration the circumstances of sex involving teenagers, which I think is really what needs to go down here. And I agree, and I love that person said on record, we should not be getting into a conversation about the maturity of a 13-year-old girl. Couldn't agree more. It is victim blamey, and it's putting additional weight on women because of our emotional maturity many times. Not that I haven't met plenty of immature 13-year-olds. I know plenty of immature 35-year-old women. Texas law applies a 3-year age allowance provided both teenagers are over 14. In Michigan, the buffer is 5 years provided they are both over 13. Arizona's law applies to individuals over the age of 15 but younger than 19 within 2 years of each other. Donna Kelly, who spent more than 3 decades prosecuting special victims' crimes in Utah, said it is true that young people's brains aren't fully developed. While a balance is necessary, she said there is value in having consequences for teenage sexual misconduct. We know from all the research for many years, the younger we can intervene in the lives of sexual offenders, the better the outcome, the less recidivism there is going to be, she said. I just don't think this guy's a sex offender. Cullimore said Utah lawmakers have made other changes to treat 18-year-old high school students the same as their 17-year-old peers. In 2022, a bill sponsored by former Representative Lowry Snow, Republican St. George, sent 18-year-olds to juvenile court for committing certain crimes, mainly misdemeanors like smoking or speeding in the parking lot. Snow's bill was limited to crimes that happened during school hours on school grounds. He said the idea was to prevent saddling young people with an adult criminal record for lesser crimes and to let them avoid having to hire attorneys to represent them in court. Cullimore said he proposed making 18-year-old high schoolers eligible for the lower third-degree felony in the same spirit. Kids who are still in high school, I don't think it's unjust to prosecute them with their 17-year-old peers just because they might turn 18 right before they graduate. Exactly. The mother of the victim said she understands the reasons for treating young offenders differently than older ones, but she added that being sexually abused so young changed her child. See, now it's gone from, now it's being called sexual abuse? Like, who said she has become more withdrawn and careful and doesn't want to be around friends as much. I mean, but maybe that's because of all the publicity this case got. Do you ever think of that? Like, maybe she's withdrawn because this whole case turned into something so much bigger. And also, we're not taking into account how much a child's personality and demeanor can change based on the reaction a parent has to something they do. Like, maybe it was this parent's reaction that all of a sudden made this child feel riddled with this 13-year-old, made this 13-year-old feel riddled with guilt and confused and, made her start questioning, was I, like, I think if someone doesn't come to you and say, and either like obviously there's times when someone comes to you and they have no idea that something awful happened to them and you have to point it out. There are circumstances like this. But then there are circumstances like in the middle where someone comes to you and you think what happened is bad, but like they're not, they were unaffected by the experience. So why then turn it into an experience where why make them the victim if they don't feel like it? That's like a big topic that we talk about a lot on Guys We Fucked. And I just don't think it is, it's serving the victim in the way that we think it is. Adams said, or I don't even want to call this person a victim. Adams says he recognizes the sensitivity and emotion surrounding these issues and want to acknowledge the pain and difficulty felt by those who have been harmed. Both my wife and I are deeply concerned for everyone affected and express our sincerest apologies to those who have been hurt. There is no blanket rule, said Kelly, the former prosecutor, for how people recover from being the victim of a crime. Here's the thing I learned from 32 years of being a prosecutor of sex crimes. Every victim is different, she said. People have a misconception that the physical act itself is damaging, but that's not what's damaging. What's damaging is the feeling of betrayal, the feeling that you can't trust people anymore. Yes, which I just feel is exacerbated by making this into a whole court case to drag your 13-year-old through when they casually told you that they had sex with an 18-year-old. Certainly have a serious conversation with your kid and be like, don't do that. That person's weird. That person is like, can't get people their own age. And this is like a lesson that you should learn now about especially men, that if they're only dating people much younger than them, that means that there's something wrong with them if their peers won't fuck them. Like, that's certainly a lesson that people need to learn. But I don't know. I'm real torn about this one. Michael, I know you were very, very interested in talking about this. Can you give me some of what's going through your mind as a girl dad?
Yeah, I mean, again, just any time laws are being changed to conveniently help the family of people who are in prominent positions. It's
Well,
like,
100%. That, and
what
again,
are we doing here?
that is 100% that is the issue for me with this. That's disgusting. Crazy.
Yeah. I don't know, man. The kids I know who were what were they? They were sophomores heading into junior year.
Okay.
Who hooked up with an 8th grader.
Yeah.
We looked at them as weird guys.
Yeah. And I agree. Weird, yucky. But then I think about all the times that like my friends and I, at 13, probably at 14, I would say, would get invited to like a senior boys like hot tub or something. Yeah. And like, we just thought it was the coolest thing ever. Like, in retrospect, of course, these guys are fucking losers. But like at the time, we were like, "Oh, this is cool," but that goes on way into your 20s. Like there's a conversation we have. Ultimately, I feel the same way about 25-year-olds who date like 40-year-olds. A lot of times, when you get older, you go, "Oh my god!" Like I thought it was so cool to date a 40-year-old, and like I was dating a 40-year-old when I was 25 because that guy was a loser and couldn't fuck any of his peers, not because he was so cool. Like that's always the story.
Yeah, but it's like...
I don't think he's a predator. I just think he's a fucking loser.
There is almost something to be said, though, for there's a rite of passage in high school even where, like, this is a senior... the crop of freshman girls come in. Some of them are going to catch the eye of the senior. There's nothing you can do about that. That's high school. Uh-huh. You're leaving your high school.
No.
Going to a junior high.
No, the middle school thing is weird.
It's so wrong, dude.
No, that part is yucky. Like, I do think, like, that here in the case, like, this is, like, this is a problem. But then, I just need some more details. It's like, okay, where did they meet? Did they meet at like a hang where he maybe knew her age but didn't know that he was still in middle school? How big is a high school? Like, you don't know everyone in your high school. Like, I would just need a little more details about the circumstances. Or was he like driving by the middle school? Like, there's a million different pieces of information that I think I still need. And just like, even like, so many headlines were calling this like child rape, and like I'm not calling you out, WACO. I'm just saying, like, the person who sent this to me, even the subject line said Utah Municipal Politics Senator rape bill. So even if you want to call it rape, it's not rape. It would be statutory rape because the sex was I know you can't legally consent, but like to me, rape and statutory rape really need to be specified. They're different things. There's no there's no force, like physical force, in this. And again, when I hear the piece of the story, it just seems like the woman, that the 13-year-old, casually brought it up. And I guess she could have casually brought it up because she maybe was like thinking about it and then started thinking like, hey, this is weird. I just don't know. I like the idea of if everyone's in high school, we're just gonna have to look at it case by case. And I think like if both parties are in high school, whether one's 13 or 18, if you're all going to the same high school, you just got to let it go. I do think that.
To be fair, the only way that's going to work is in a situation like yours where, your birthday is so early in the school calendar.
Sure.
If you go from just meeting this girl to sleeping with her when she's 13 and a freshman in high school, that's all I need to know about that case by case. You are beyond a predator. You know what I mean? You didn't wait the what is it going to be, 3 weeks till she turns 18?
Yeah, I don't know that. Yeah, if you mean till she turns 14?
To 14, yeah.
But but then it's also like, it's kind of just like, well, you're basically 14 then because you've lived the life. Like, I don't know. I agree with what a lot of this article talked about, which is like people have a really, the judicial system has historically had a really hard time handling sex cases for young adults, and I understand why. And I certainly do not think there should be a bracket where blanket 18 to 24-year-olds are all handled in the same bracket, especially high school 18-year-olds. That's crazy. And I do and the fact, and I guess also a saving grace for this guy is the fact that he was an 18-year-old in high school, not an 18-year-old graduate. Like, that would be different. And then, and the writer said, hey, Corinne, this story is all we're talking about here in Utah. It feels hypocritical that the Republican men leading our state are blaming transgender people for endangering girls while allowing things like this to happen. Thought this would interest you due to your expertise about violence against women, and would love to hear your thoughts. Like, because even then I go, this to me doesn't, like, yes, violence towards women is a huge problem. We read about it every week. This though, and this is just a little bit, it's a little bit muddier for me. I mean, I'm not going to have the opportunity, but I would love to. I'd be so interested to talk to this, 13-year-old girl and her family. I'm really quite interested in it. But yeah, you can further discuss that, withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com, or you can call in. And again, I mean, I feel like I do have not only from my knowledge of sex and law, and politics, but like also just like as being someone who experienced this with older men time after time. Not having sex. I mean, I didn't have sex till I was 18, but that was like fully my choice, just because I was like disgusted by the people in New Jersey. Okay, moving on. Oh, I have such a migraine that's like in my teeth. All right, let's move on. This is from the WACO mailbag. This is from WACO Christy. Hi, Corinne. This email is a follow-up to the conversation, an article about Trump's executive order increasing the ability to involuntarily hospitalize the mentally ill, which we talked about for a while on this show because it's something that I dealt with a lot during the New York City mayor's race. However, I will be focusing more on the homelessness part of that. My interest in this is that I do work for a state in the homelessness prevention office. I want to share with you first the executive order itself. I think it is valuable to read it directly from the White House to get the words from their mouth. And she linked it here so we can go to that. I mean, I think, didn't we read part of this last week? Because I love going to the, White House website. It's one of my favorite pastimes. So it's super long. If you guys want to read it, you can look it up for yourselves. But I'll read the first part on it, about the purpose and the policy of it, and then I'll read like the different headers. It says. Purpose and policy. Endemic vagrancy, disorderly behavior, sudden confrontations, and violent attacks have made our cities unsafe. The number of individuals living on the streets in the United States on a single night during the last year of the previous administration, 274,224, was the highest ever recorded. And that's actually way lower than I would think it would be based off what I know the number of homelessness to be in New York City alone. The overwhelming majority of these individuals are addicted to drugs, have a mental health condition, or both. Nearly 2/3 of homeless individuals report having regularly used hard drugs like methamphetamines, cocaine, or opioids in their lifetime. An equally large share of homeless individuals reported suffering from mental health conditions. The federal government and the state have spent tens of thousands of dollars on failed programs that address homelessness, but not its root causes, leaving other citizens vulnerable to public safety threats. Shifting homeless individuals into long-term institutional settings for humane treatment through the appropriate use of civil commitment will restore public order. Surrendering our cities and citizens to disorder and fear is neither compassionate to the homeless nor other citizens. My administration will take a new approach focused on protecting public safety. And I brought this up. I brought up exactly like this sentiment when I first acknowledged it, because I said, I actually did want to change Kendra's law or alter Kendra's law. And I do think that the cycling in and out of mental institutions is a disservice to the homeless. But I knew that the reason, first and foremost, that the Trump administration would want to do it would not have been out of empathy. It would have been about, this kind of Republican thought of like, clean up the streets, right? And I think there's like a bit, the big differentiation here that we want to talk about is the difference between homeless individuals who have a place to stay and homeless individuals who truly live on the streets. Those are two different groups. And when you're dealing with unhoused people, you certainly break them up into those two groups because they have very different experiences. So it seems they're talking about people, unhoused individuals who are living on the streets, and they do make it clear in this purpose and policy, which is why the number is a lot lower. if you included, unhoused people who are staying at, different facilities, this number would be way higher than 274,224. So that's why that number is actually like pretty low, because this is actual people living on the streets. And I'm sure like maybe people have, problems with the fact that they're saying, calling these people like drug addicts and, having mental health conditions based on New York City. And that's all I can base it off of. I can base it off of a couple other cities, actually, like Portland, other places, at Portland, Oregon, other places I've been that I saw to have a very big San Francisco homelessness problem. This is accurate. Like when people who are actually living on the streets, certainly in New York City, these are individuals who do have a serious drug addiction or mental health addiction. Like there's no question. I don't need a report. I just walk around. Like, yes. Unhoused people in general, yeah, you don't want to make a sweeping statement like that because that's certainly not true about that group of individuals. But those are two different groups. And here we're talking about specifically people residing on the streets. I mean, if you can even call it that. So then 2, they talk about restoring civil commitment. 3, fighting vagrancy on America's streets. I mean, I don't even love the fact that they're calling it vagrancy, but okay. Redirecting federal resources toward effective methods of addressing homelessness. And like, what are they doing? They're Republicans, so they're very much against like harm reduction, even though there is lots of proof that harm reduction does help. But whatever, they're not going to go for that. Increasing accountability and safety in America's homelessness programs. General provisions. That. So like, yeah, do I trust at all that this is done with good intentions? No. But I was just like kind of talking about the concept in general. Because I think it is something where, the left might have fucked up. I don't think the right's response is right, but I think the left might have been like a little bit too laid back about it. All right, so this executive order eliminates housing first approaches to addressing homeless populations. Yeah, not good. Housing for, and this is, I especially love this email because it's from someone who's an expert in this. Housing first is a data-driven, proven model to be, data-driven and proven model to be effective. Yes, housing first, love. Ultimately, it is to house some conditions free, then provide the additional support. So yeah, basically the thing is like you want to first get them into a home and then provide additional support. This is because someone with mental illness, in need of a job, or addicted cannot truly focus on their problems when being unhoused. Right, and I agree. So I agree that the worst thing for these groups of people is that they remain lingering around the streets. 100%, because you're not going to be able to, like, if you need medication, if you need mental health care, like, you're not going to get any of that, at least not on a regular basis, if you're roaming the streets. My issue is, though, like, housing first, what we're talking, like, some of these individuals definitely need to be in some kind of a facility where they're being looked over by mental health professionals, not just in like group housing or something. And again, I'm talking about like, I know this firsthand. I live in the East Village in New York City. We got the regs. And these are people who are suffering from mental health, serious mental health conditions and drug addictions. And these are people who, if they were just placed in housing without any professional people, mental health professionals, et cetera, looking over them, it's not possible for them to be living alone. It's just not possible. It's not feasible. So this executive order is removing things that do help addicted or mentally ill homeless people while criminalizing the fact that they aren't housed, which is insane. I read something about they were going to start fighting people for being unhoused. Like, I don't think it should be illegal to be homeless. I think it should be. I think the government should be fined based on how many homeless people you have, because it's a government's responsibility to make sure that its people are taken care of. Like, what are you even talking about right now? To try and fine people for being homeless. Yo, if they had money, they like would be doing something else with it. They don't have fine money. It's such it's obscene. I also want to share some insider insight because we will often see in the news people try to cool down tensions by pointing out that executive orders are not law. However, this administration is making serious impacts in backhanded ways. One way they are doing this is by using executive orders to change contract language within government grants and contracts. One example I have seen is about gender. Government grants now explicitly say federal funds shall not be used to promote gender ideology. And then there's a link here to the Federal Register, federalregister.gov. And it says defending women from gender ideology extremism and restoring biological truth to the federal government. Because, as is the MAGA way, somehow all roads lead back to being transgender. We're literally having a conversation here about the homelessness epidemic in America, and somehow trans people are a problem there too. It's quite wild. Quite wild. And again, if we want to do numbers, all my unhoused neighbors, out of all of them, there's only one who I'm pretty sure identifies as transgender. Definitely not cis. I mean, I didn't ask them, but this is the only person who seems to have any fluidity in their gender. And this is many, many people. There's one who there's any gender fluidity question. This directly impacts organizations that offer services to the transgender community. And New Alternatives, who I work with a lot, specifically, they're a group that's working with people who are non-binary, gay, straight, gay, bisexual, queer, who got kicked out of their houses many times for coming out as one of those things. This directly impacts organizations that offer services to the transgender community, even if that is not their primary service. A domestic violence shelter can be impacted and at risk if they offer to serve transgender women as well. And that's a huge shame because we know transgender women are highly impacted by violence. That's especially transgender women of color. All right. So thank you so much for sending that in to me. I just added to the list of more food for thought. Now I'm going to move on to a quick could be worse. I know we're constantly, as far as international news, really only talking very much about Gaza and Israel, and rightly so. It's god awful. Good news, some other world leaders kind of signed a documentation in the past week or so. Japan was included in that. A bunch of countries kind of got together and their leaders started being like, we need to send aid to Gaza. So that's kind of what we need to start doing, or needed to do, months and months ago, years ago, really. But I wanted to talk about Sudan because they're also going through just unspeakable horrors there. And this is from the Washington Post from today. Sudan's calamity and the end of the liberal world order. Sudan suffers from a neglect and indifference that seems to reflect the new shape of global politics. And I didn't want to be a part of that, meaning so I think it's just important that we also talk about Sudan. Because it seems like there's always the hot topic to talk about even in politics. And that's not right. Suffering is suffering. The superlatives in Sudan remain stark. The country is home to the world's worst hunger crisis, a man-made calamity brought on by more than 2 years of disastrous civil war and state collapse that has led to more than 150,000 deaths. It is home to the world's biggest displacement crisis, with more than 12 million people driven from their houses and neighborhoods. And it's home to the world's largest education crisis for children, with as many as 17 million children out of school. The UN projects that about 3.2 million children under 5 will suffer acute malnutrition in the next year. A year ago, famine was declared in parts of the country, but that warning from the UN system did little to stem the hunger or focus international efforts on ending the conflict. At least 63 people, mostly women and children, starved to death in the past week in the besieged city of El Fasher, the last major urban center in the sprawling Darfur region. to not fall to the Parliamentary Rapid Support Forces. Local officials told reporters that number accounted only for those who made it to the medical facilities in an area beset by battles and bombings. Aid has not entered the city for a year. Everyone in Al Fasher is facing a daily struggle to survive, Eric Purdison, the World Food Programme's regional director for Eastern and Southern Africa, said in a statement last week. People's coping mechanisms have been completely exhausted by over 2 years of war. Without immediate and sustained access, lives will be lost. The RSF has renewed its offensive on the city after losing its foothold in Khartoum, the country's capital, to the rival Sudanese army. Its advances have driven tens of thousands from the nearby Zamzam displacement camp, itself the target of attacks and massacres of civilians. Such atrocities have played out across Sudan's vast expanse, but most intensely in Darfur, where prosecutors from the International Criminal Court, which we talk about a lot, say there's plenty of evidence of war crimes. The region, which suffered a genocide campaign by the RSF's precursor militia a generation ago, is largely in the group's control now. The territory held by the RSF has been indiscriminately bombed by the Sudanese military, while the RSF is accused of carrying out systematic rape and ethnic cleansing of non-ethnic Arabs. People are being deprived of water and food. Rape and sexual violence are being weaponized. Abductions for ransom and to bolster the ranks of armed groups have become common practice, ICC Deputy Prosecutor Nazhat Shahmin Khan told the UN Security Council last month. We have reasonable grounds to believe that war crimes and crimes against humanity have been and continue to be committed in Darfur. All the while, there's little hope of the war ending, even as President Donald Trump casts himself as a global peacemaker, playing third-party presider over a series of truces and deals between various countries. The war in Sudan has barely received a mention from the White House. In one of its departing acts, the Biden administration declared that the RSF was committing genocide in its rampages in Darfur. It also imposed sanctions on both the country's rival leaders, Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, leader of the RSF, and General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, head of the Sudanese military. Those largely symbolic acts did little to change the situation on the ground as the war carried on, but Trump's decision to gut U.S. aid, a crucial element of the international humanitarian system, led to vital clinics in Sudan shuttering and the drying up of life-saving assistance to some communities. The White House's cost-cutting in Washington may be measured in deaths in Sudan. A thicket of geopolitical interests run through the conflict, with outside powers ranging from Egypt and Turkey to Russia and the Gulf monarchies all involved in some way. Last week, Sudan's military claimed it shot down an Emirati plane carrying dozens of Colombian mercenaries aligned with the RSF. As they have done repeatedly amid mounting allegations over its links to the RSF, UAE officials rejected the charge as deliberate propaganda. The intraceable nature of the war and the ubiquity of suffering is an indictment of a faltering international system. The end of the liberal world order is a phrase that gets thrown around a lot in conference rooms and university lecture halls in places like Washington and Brussels. Ann Applebaum wrote in The Atlantic's latest cover story, reporting from a ramshackle camp for the displaced outside Khartoum. But in Al-Hamada, this theoretical idea has become reality. The liberal world order has already ended in Sudan, and there isn't anything to replace it. Reprising arguments trotted out by Israeli officials, French public intellectual Bernard-Henri Lévy journeyed to Sudan to lecture Western leftists. Here, the death toll is at least 3 times that of Gaza, he wrote in the Wall Street Journal this month. Yet no one on American campuses or among the Greta Thunbergs and other progressive extreme leftists cares. There are no protests, radio silence. And again, we talked about this once before, at least, like Sudan meaning, but also just the concept of even tragedies being in vogue or not. And at any given time, there will be multiple tragedies happening worldwide, obviously, such as life. But there will be one that is the one that you hear celebrities and influencers talking about, that you see on social media. And then there are ones, Sudan being an example, the Uyghurs being another example, that will somehow just not enter, I hate to say it, but the zeitgeist, and then and the suffering will just go on. And you go, is it because the place offers our country nothing? It is not a wealthy place. It is not a place where the people look like the kind of people that we want to see as victims. Is their skin, color not the glamorous color that we want? Are they not the ethnicity that we're like, there's so many questions that run through my mind. And you go, I mean, obviously with Israel and Gaza, you understand why, because of America's relationship with Israel. So that one's like clearer. But then sometimes you wonder why, like, again, when there's this immense loss, this immense starvation, 150,000 people dying, children starving to death, you go, wow, we're just not talking about this at all. I haven't seen one mention of Sudan online, and I'm pretty online. Not one mention. And I'm following news all the time. To be sure, Western powers do not directly sponsor either of Sudan's warring parties, which, again, we just talked about, which is, again, a big part with Israel-Gaza, so I get that. Nor do they shield it from international censure at the United Nations, as the United States does in the case of Israel. But Sudan suffers from a neglect and indifference that seems to reflect the new shape of global politics. Applebaum laid the crisis at the feet of U.S. decline. We live in a very interesting, many people call it, New World Order, Abdallah Hamdok, a former Sudanese prime minister, told her. The world we got to know, the consensus, the Pax Americana, the post-Second World War consensus, is just no more. Bruno Macias, a former Portuguese government minister and an outspoken commentator on global affairs, suggested the opposite. The war in Sudan, he argued on X, reflects a global order that Trump may happily embrace, including the complete collusion between foreign policy and the military-industrial complex, a disregard of the entities of humanitarian organizations and rights groups, and tolerance of human rights abusing regimes that claim to be fighting Islamists. In other words, he wrote, it shows what the American order looks like in all its main traits. And then there is also, they reference that piece in the Atlantic. There is another piece in the Atlantic, which we won't read, but it's the most nihilistic conflict on Earth, and that is by Anne Applebaum, and that's a much long, it's an hour-long story. But if you are perhaps interested in learning more about this, and that doesn't mean that you have to stop thinking about Israel or Gaza. I do not recommend that at all, in fact. But I just think that, like, if our problem is that people are suffering and dying and there is a genocide, and that's our problem with Gaza, if that's truly the reason that, that keeps you up, and I do think that we should absolutely be concentrating on this story as well. And, we knew that we took so much funding away from international programs, and here, when we talk about what are the effects of that, I thought one of the most standout lines of that article for me was, you can count them in deaths in Sudan. I thought that was quite a moving line, and really puts into perspective what this administration is actually doing. Okay. Fighting through this migraine. Okay. Sorry, I'm just gonna grab my bag. I think I might have Excedrin migraine in it.
Ba-doo ba-doo boo doo boo boo doo wah. We'll be right back.
Never mind, I don't. What did you say? Did you say we'll be right back?
No, I was just doing hold music.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I always have it on me, and I don't have it on me now. That's my fault. Okay. Let's see.
You want me to get some Advil from the other room? Would that help?
No, it won't work. Thank you, though.
Okay.
So Anna, I had the Cuties Corner. I was going to quickly mention Anna Delvey, but we don't really need to go into that anymore. I kind of talked about what I need to talk about. I'm just like, I just want to stop talking about assholes. We just need to stop. Why is Anna Delvey doing a photo shoot at all? Is my response to the bunny story. Why is Anna Delvey doing a photo shoot at all? Because, you know, and I think it's a big problem. You know, we say as a society that we want to good people to have the spotlight, but our interest remains in the villain. And I'm certainly guilty of this, and I have really tried hard to correct that in my algorithm, in what I intake, in what I talk about. Obviously it's hard. Like, you do have to talk about the villain when you're doing a news show because they're having, you know, impact. But Anna Delvey, for the most part, is not having very much impact. So I just want to stop talking about people like her. They don't deserve the spotlight. End of story. I don't think it's cute or charming to have Netflix, you know, movies about them. Like, please, like, people who do good things also have interesting lives, and you can use, you know, your creativity and make a Netflix movie about that. I wanted to talk quickly about Peanut. If you guys remember Peanut the squirrel who was euthanized, this was a huge story, and there's been some movement on it. Our friends at the White Coat Waste Project were certainly talking about it. But there's like a $10 million lawsuit, there is a $10 million lawsuit going on right now. And Newsweek covered it. It said Peanut the squirrel's owners seek $10 million over death of irreplaceable animal. The owners of Peanut the squirrel and, let's not forget, a raccoon named Fred are suing the state of New York for $10 million in damages after the animals were euthanized last year. Marc Longo and Daniela Bittner filed the lawsuit on Thursday in the New York Court of Claims, alleging constitutional violations and wrongful killing of their animals by state officials. The lawsuit names the state, the Department of Environmental Conservation, and the Department of Health as defendants. Newsweek contacted Longo's attorney, Nora Constance Marino, the DEC, the DOH, and the state of New York for comment by email. Why it matters. The lawsuit alleges that the seizure and killing of Peanut and Fred were not only a violation of New York's wildlife laws, but also an infringement of the owner's 4th and 14th Amendment rights. Whether such laws even apply is debatable. The plaintiffs maintain neither Peanut nor Fred were, quote, wild animals under the law, but rather companion animals. If successful, the case would set precedent for how far state agencies can go in enforcing wildlife regulations, particularly when animals are domesticated and kept in private homes. Yeah, and I mean, I was just watching at Simon Sits, Isabel Klee, who was talking about a tiger that was living in a apartment in Queens and ended up at a shelter in New York City. And so, yeah, first of all, like, lots of people, like, having a raccoon, I guess, like, in this neck of the woods, it's weird to have a raccoon as a pet, but that's not, like, some states do allow you to do that. And I'm guessing squirrel is the same. Like, these are not crazy animals to have as pets. And certainly once they're domesticated and rely on, getting their food brought to them and wearing cowboy hats, you can't just, like, release them back into the wild. So it just seemed wild, that the solution was they're better off dead than in a home with people who are taking care of them. Like, sometimes the law, I understand the law is the law, but I really wish we could use our human brains and apply some logic to some of these things. The incident unfolded just before the 2024 presidential election. sparking widespread online outrage and even bomb threats against officials. I love animal rights activists. They're so extra. It became a rallying point for critics of government overreach, drawing attention from public figures such as Elon Musk and Joe Rogan. Yeah, the government overreach people loved this story. Longo and Bittner described Peanut's personality and abilities as unique and irreplaceable. Fred's personality and abilities, while still developing, were showing signs he too would be unique and irreplaceable, though they intended to release him back into the wild. All right. The animals were both kept inside their home. New York law prohibits keeping squirrels and raccoons as pets because they are classified as wild animals, and again, that's state by state. Many of Peanut's fans knew about the couple's sanctuary because of his social media presence, and many donated because of his stardom. Peanut's likeness, antics, and image were used for promotion, endorsements, sponsorships, and marketing by way of plaintiff D&M, including on Cameo and OnlyFans. Fred was beginning to build his own online following. And again, do I love these people in the story? Do I think like they're great and they're not completely like, they're not really the equivalent of putting a cap on a monkey and making it beg for change? No, I don't know that they're great. I don't love everything they're doing, but their animals shouldn't have been euthanized. The couple are seeking compensatory and punitive damages, along with legal fees and costs, claiming severe emotional distress, humiliation, and damage to reputation. And I think that last part is what they're really concerned about. According to the lawsuit, a group of DEC and DOH agents, along with other law enforcement officers, arrived at the couple's Pine City property on October 30th, 2024, to execute a search warrant. Both animals were seized during the raid and later killed by state officials. DEC officials said that Peanut bit an agent through thick leather gloves during the raid. Yeah, because they were probably treating it rough like an asshole, and it's used to wearing a cowboy hat and performing on TikTok, prompting both animals to be euthanized and decapitated for rabies testing. The state has since confirmed the tests were negative. Well, I'm glad that we euthanized them and decapitated them so we could find that out. The complaint alleges the killings were not due to fear of rabies, but were a senseless act of violence and obscene demonstration of government abuse, which is the main thing of these stories. Like, do I like the owners of Peanut and Fred? Not really. I don't know them, but I don't like them. I'm like very just like if you're featuring your pet on social media in their natural state, and like, it's just like your dog running around and you're using it for like dog rescue or something like that, and dog training, anything like that, that's fine. If you're putting a hat on an animal, making it do a little dance more than a couple times, I mean, obviously everyone is going to do that a couple times because it's fun and hilarious. But like if that becomes their job, that they are some kind of a performer, I don't believe that an animal, if we want to talk about consent, I don't believe an animal can consent to being in the entertainment business. So unless you're chronicling them doing anything but being an animal, I don't think you're a good person. I don't trust you. I think you found a way to. I think you're not interesting. It's interesting, but you want it to be famous. So now you're making your animal do the heavy lifting. Listen, your pet's not the fucking WB frog. Let him live. But that being said, I do think this was an obscene demonstration of government abuse, as the article points out. And do I think like animals should be dancing on TikTok? No. Again, if a couple times a cat playing piano, very cute, but not constantly. But do I think that the animal would rather have been alive in a cowboy hat, hanging out with these people, than euthanized and decapitated, and also like the fear they must have felt being ripped away from their homes? I would choose the cowboy hat performance. The plaintiffs claim they were unlawfully detained without probable cause and subjected to an unreasonable search and seizure. Oh, this also reminds me, Tanya Haddix was also, from Chimp Crazy, was also sentenced this week. She's going to jail for like 4 years or something for lying about her monkey being dead, her chimp being dead. And that despite having no evidence of criminal activity, defendants proceeded to arrest plaintiffs and initiate baseless charges. The suit also alleges that the seizure exceeded the scope of the warrant and that requests for the animal's remains have gone unanswered. Defendants have engaged in a pattern of conduct that has deprived plaintiffs of their constitutional rights under the 4th and 14th Amendments, the complaint states. It adds the acts and omissions of the defendants were intentional, malicious, and taken with reckless disregard for the rights of the plaintiffs. The filing follows an earlier lawsuit in Chemung County Supreme Court targeting local and state officials over the same incident. Oh my God, let's see. Donald Trump Jr. said at a rally, "Justice for Peanut. Our government will let in 16,000 rapists. They will let in 13,000 murderers. They will let in 600,000 criminals across our border. But if someone has a pet squirrel without a permit, they will go in there and kill the squirrel." And like, obviously there's different, like, I understand what he's saying, which is miraculous. But you know, there's different agencies that have different responsibilities. So yes, while I don't agree with that, you know, that what he's saying we're letting rapists and stuff in, but I agree with the sentiment of what he's saying is that we have bigger fish to fry, right? That's a sentiment. But also, while I do agree with that, keep in mind that the same government department that is going to seize a squirrel is not the same department that's in charge of immigration. It's not the same department that's in charge of homelessness. It's not the same government department that's in, you know, charge of making sure Americans, you know, eat healthy food. So it's a bit of a stretch, but it is Donald Trump Jr. All right. Into our main story this week, and that's Donald Trump's D.C. takeover, baby. Fun times. Oof. If I get up fast, it just means I'm going to throw up, guys. All right. This is from Time magazine. Trump's D.C. takeover yields 66 arrests in first 2 nights as city braces for more National Guard troops. This is by Nick Popley. Federal authorities arrested 66 people in Washington, D.C. over the first 2 nights of President Donald Trump's takeover of the city's police force. The way the Donald Trump's takeover just makes it seem like it's some kind of like a promotion for a new film that came out. A White House official tells Time, adding that the nation's capital can expect to see even more National Guard members across the city Wednesday evening. 43 of those arrests occurred overnight on Tuesday, nearly double the amount of the previous night, as more federal agents and National Guard troops arrived in the city to patrol streets as part of Trump's effort to crack down on crime, which has been falling in the city over the last 2 years. The aggressive federal intervention came after Trump on Monday invoked a rarely used provision, again, take it from the playbook, of the 1973 Home Rule Act, allowing the president to place the Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control for up to 30 days during a declared public safety emergency. I do feel like there is a world in which Donald Trump is lying in bed asking ChatGPT, what are rarely used provisions that presidents historically have not used but can use if they want to? Like, in fact, wait, what if I asked ChatGPT that right now? What will it tell me? Because I do feel like this is what Donald Trump is sitting at home doing. Hey girl, hey. I don't know what your gender is actually, or your sex, but if I was president, could you give me a list of provisions that the president technically can use or enforce, but typically do not, and no president has ever or for many decades? Let's see what it says. Boop, boop, boop. I asked a big question, so it's going to take a moment to think. But while it's thinking, we can do that. Oh. So let's see. Hey there, diving into the parts of presidential power that are technically on the books yet rarely, if ever, invoked by modern President of the United States, POTUSes. Let's unpack some fascinating, rarely used tools. And I'll fingers crossed Donald isn't listening because we don't want to give him any ideas. We don't want this to be the political version of the Saw movies. But it says rarely used or dormant presidential powers. So this is just, this could just be a little wet your whistle for things to come. Number 1, unilateral invocation of the Roosevelt corollary / customs takeover. What it is, President Theodore Roosevelt claimed the authority to take over a country's customs houses without Senate ratification of a treaty, citing the Roosevelt corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. Why it's rare, it sidestepped the usual Senate process and hasn't been used in modern decades. 2, seizing private assets without congressional authorization. Examples, Truman's 1952 order to seize steel mills during a labor dispute, which was declared unconstitutional, FDR's internment of Japanese Americans under the Executive Order 9066 and the Alien Enemies Act. Oh, this one's definitely coming. Why unused now? These moves were heavily contested legally or morally and haven't been replicated due to the constitutional constraints and public outrage. 3, declaring neutrality without congressional backing. Context: Washington issued a neutrality proclamation during the French Revolutionary Wars, a power not explicitly in the Constitution, later codified by the Neutrality Act of 1794. Why it's rare, today foreign policy is structured through formal laws and treaties. 4, adjournment, power to recess Congress. What it allows: the president can adjourn Congress if the two chambers disagree on adjournment, a power explicitly allowed by the Constitution. Why it's unused: in practice, modern Congress avoids this deadlock or passes pro forma sessions to sidestep such a scenario, which is smart of them. 5, waiving certain federal law provisions, which is also called executive waivers. What they are: the president can selectively delay or modify enforcement of specific law provisions. Example, Medicaid waivers, welfare reform, or sanctions. Though used quietly, example, Obama's Iran sanctions waiver in 2015, they're rarely highlighted or widely recognized. So that one's just happening and we just don't know about it. Extended federal control over local forces, the D.C. Home Rule Act. What's unique: under the D.C. Home Rule Act, the president can take control of D.C. This is the one that's happening now. Can take control of D.C.'s police during an emergency, but only for 30 days without Congress. Why it's seldom used: it's a powerful tool that's used sparingly. Trump invoked it recently in August 2025, making a rare application. 7, signing statements to challenge or limit compliance. What they are: presidents append statements to bills expressing constitutional objections to specific provisions, signaling noncompliance. Why rare: gain publicity with Presidents Bush and Obama, but remain controversial and constitutionally murky. Interesting that Obama's name came up twice during that, isn't it? Okay, let's go on with that. I thought that was very interesting. And again, just like things that are coming up. The aggressive federal intervention came after Trump on Monday invoked a rarely used provision of the 1973 Home Rule Act, allowing the president to place the Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control for up to 30 days during a declared public safety emergency. Trump has said he will ask Congress to extend his authority beyond the 30-day limit. More than 1,450 law enforcement officers and agents were involved in Tuesday night's operation, about half of them from the city's police department. The National Guard's role has so far been limited. Only about 30 troops were on D.C. streets Tuesday night, though officials say as many as 800 could eventually be mobilized to protect federal sites and assist in other non-arrest functions. On Tuesday evening, a small group of Guard members in military vehicles appeared near the Washington Monument, where they were seen taking photos with visitors before departing 2 hours later. The White House official tells Time that plans are underway for a significantly higher National Guard presence throughout the city on Wednesday night. The president has described daily life in Washington, D.C. in apocalyptic terms and framed the intervention as a necessary response to what he called an out-of-control crisis due to thugs and gang members. But city statistics show a different picture. Overall, crime has declined sharply since 2023, with homicides, robberies, and carjackings all falling. There's also a lot of black people in Washington, D.C., so this just feels racist. The White House official said that federal authorities have so far arrested 103 people in D.C. since the administration started rolling out an increased law enforcement presence last Thursday, with 19 mixed agency teams fanning out across neighborhoods to promote public safety and arrest violent offenders, the White House said. The operation has included agents from the FBI, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and the Department of Homeland Security working alongside local police. In other parts of the city, federal agents were spotted conducting traffic stops and making arrests. Charges over the first 2 nights have included assault with a deadly weapon, homicide, drug possession with intent to distribute, unlawful entry, resisting arrest, lewd acts, stalking. Stalking. When's the last time anyone you know when they're actually getting people on stalking that they are grasping at straws, because stalking usually involves a man stalking a woman, and the fucking cops don't give a shit about that. Reckless driving and driving under the influence, the official said. 13 illegal firearms have been seized since Monday night. I like that. The White House has signaled that the crackdown will also focus on dismantling homeless encampments, with officials offering those affected access to services like substance abuse counseling, but threatening fines or arrests for those who refuse to relocate. And that was like the headline that we just saw pulled separately, that like they were going to start fining people for being homeless. Janine Pirro, the newly appointed U.S. attorney for the district, has called for tougher sentencing laws, particularly for juveniles she accuses of driving much of the city's violent crime. Young criminals have been emboldened to think that they can get away with committing crime in this city, she wrote in a Washington Post opinion piece on Tuesday night. And that's going to primarily affect young black men, for sure. Trump's use of federal force in the nation's capital has drawn parallels to his 2020 deployment of the National Guard during racial justice protests, when officers forcibly cleared demonstrators from Lafayette Square and military helicopters performed low-altitude maneuvers over city streets. Since Washington, D.C. is not a state, the president is able to deploy the National Guard and assume control of its police during declared emergencies. The lack of statehood also means the 700,000 residents of the city have no voting representation in Congress. Asked on Wednesday about the longstanding push for D.C. statehood, Trump called the proposal unacceptable and ridiculous. All right. And then also kind of in the same, it's part of the same story, and this is from Politico. Trump floats circumventing Congress to maintain control of D.C. police, right? So we saw he employed something that you can do for 30 days. Now he's going to try, as an authoritarian power does, to extend that. All right, the president must secure congressional approval to extend the 30-day federal takeover. This is by Giselle Ruhia Ewing. Cool last name, former Nick. I don't know if they're related, but it's just cool. Sorry, gonna stretch. President Donald Trump on Wednesday suggested that he could avoid congressional approval to extend his 30-day federal takeover of Washington's police amid his efforts to wrest control of the Capitol's law enforcement. Trump this week invoked the Home Rule Act, effectively handling the executive branch control over Washington's police for up to 30 days. Beyond that, Trump would have to go through Congress for an extension authorization. But during his speech announcing the 2025 Kennedy Center honorees on Wednesday, oh God, I would love a list of that. What is it? Kid Rock? Trump repeatedly floated, it's Kid Rock and Jelly Roll. Trump repeatedly floated circumventing Congress to maintain his hold over the city's law enforcement. If it's a national emergency, we can do without Congress, but what we expect to be...
When I tell you,
yeah,
you're so not far off.
Wait, who is it? We'll stop. We'll stop.
All right, this name that I've never heard before. I don't know if you know. Michael Crawford.
No, but I'm going to look him up, and I'm sure he has a cowboy hat on.
No, but George Strait sure does.
Oh, but George Strait really should be he should get that honor. George Strait is the legend.
Okay. Gloria Gaynor.
Okay, that's a legend. She should get it.
Kiss.
I mean, I don't think Kiss should get any kind of I think they're such a sucky band, but they're fun. And
Sly Stallone.
That's extremely Trump coded. But he did have at least he's someone who has an impact. So Michael Crawford is an English actor and comedian. It looks like, if this is the right, he's an 83-year-old guy. It looks like it is. He's an 83-year-old guy from England. How do I not know? He seems like I should know him. He had a role in the musical version of the film Hello, Dolly. So I've seen and he had the titular role in the Phantom of the Opera. That's cool. So he's like a theater guy. All right, cool. Good for him. That's funny, though. Sly Stallone. All right, so Trump appeared to be banking on the support of congressional Republicans to push through any attempt to extend the 30-day takeover, but maintained if lawmakers failed to approve the extension, he would go forward with the move on his own by declaring a national emergency. And there you have it. There you have it. Where there's a will, there's a way. You know? Trump really is, a good lesson in resilience if you want to take something positive from them. And where there's a will, there's a way. He's going to get shit done. Is it going to get done well? No. Are people going to like him? No. But he's going to get done. I don't want to call a national emergency, Trump said before adding, if I have to, I will. Trump also announced that he was working with congressional Republicans to put forward a crime bill initially targeted at Washington, but intended as a beacon for other Democratic cities such as New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. We're going to need a crime bill that we're going to be putting in, and it's going to pertain initially to D.C., Trump said. We're going to be asking for extensions on that, long-term extensions, because he can't have 30 days. California already felt the repercussions of the Trump administration's targeting early this summer when the president deployed the National Guard to help quell protests against immigration detention sweeps in Los Angeles. Trump on Monday announced that he was taking control over Washington's police force and deploying the National Guard to patrol the city's streets, citing a rise in violent crime, which local leaders have disputed, pointing to statistics showing the city hitting a 30-year low last year. Trump declared that Monday was Liberation Day for the city and invoked a never-been-used statute of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act, allowing the president to take control over the local police in cases of emergencies. So far, D.C. leadership has been playing nice with the president, with Mayor Muriel Bowser calling the move unsettling and unprecedented, but still saying the city would comply with Trump's order. I mean, it would be pretty hard not to, I guess, except for the first 30 days, but seems like Muriel should not do that. I mean, she's a Democrat. She's a 53-year-old black woman. She's a Democrat. Have some balls, Muriel. The president on Wednesday added that he would be going to Congress for a relatively small amount of money to fix up the nation's capital, including fixing potholes and getting rid of medians in the city's roads. Asked about the prospect of D.C. statehood, which the city's leaders have long pushed for without success, Trump called the efforts ridiculous and unacceptable, saying the overwhelmingly blue city would pick up 2 senators, and that's not going to happen. And there you go. That last sentence was left out of the other article, and that's what he's really thinking there. Okay, we're 2 hours in. Trump's meeting Putin. All right. I'm going to go do 2 more articles, I think, because we're at the 2-hour mark right now. And all right. So this is from Girl. This is from NPR. White House calls for a comprehensive review of 8 Smithsonian museums. Fun. The Trump administration sent a letter to the Smithsonian Institution on Tuesday requesting a comprehensive internal review of 8 of its museums with the aim of bringing the organization in line with President Trump's cultural directives ahead of the country's 250th anniversary celebrations. Mike, I have a weird ask. Is there like a bag that you could get me if I have to, if I have to throw up, it's going to happen fast, and I just don't want to ruin the carpet. This sounds weird, guys, but I'm so used to having migraines that, honestly, I could just throw up honestly, I hope I throw up because I'll feel better. But this is like the migraine girlies get it, It's just right in this whole side of my face. Okay, the Trump administration sent a letter to the Smithsonian Institution on Tuesday requesting a comprehensive internal review of 8 of its museums with the aim of bringing the organization in line with President Trump's cultural directives ahead of the country's 250th anniversary celebrations. This initial aims to ensure alignment with the president's directive to celebrate American exceptionalism, remove divisive or partisan narratives, and restore confidence in our shared cultural institutions, states the letter, which was addressed to Smithsonian Secretary Lonnie Bunch, signed by White House officials Lindsay Halligan, Vince Halley, and Russell Voigt, and reprinted on the White House's website. The White House said it plans to conduct the process in stages. Among the 8 museums included in the first phase are the National Museum of American History, the National Museum of Natural History, the National Museum of African American History and Culture, the National Museum of the American Indian, the National Air and Space Museum, the Smithsonian American Art Museum, the National Portrait Gallery, and the Hirshhorn Museum of Sculpture Garden. The process will include an analysis of everything from exhibition texts and social media content to the curatorial process and exhibition planning. The letter sets out a detailed list of materials the museums need to submit for White House appraisal, including grant-related documentation, inventories of permanent holdings, and visitor surveys. It also lays out a timeline by which the Trump administration expects parts of the review process to be completed, with specific 30, 75, and 120-day targets. Within 120 days, museums should begin implementing content corrections where necessary, replacing divisive or ideologically driven language with unifying, historically accurate, and constructive descriptions across placards, wall didactics, digital displays, and other public-facing materials, the letter states. So, I mean, literally rewriting history here. At least one Smithsonian museum has already made moves to correct public-facing content. Earlier this month, its National Museum of American History removed references to Trump's 2 first-term impeachments from an exhibit following a review. The museum later updated the exhibit with an edited version. The Smithsonian said in a statement Tuesday that its work is grounded in a deep commitment to scholarly excellence, rigorous research, and the accurate factual presentation of history. We are reviewing the letter with this commitment in mind and will continue to collaborate constructively with the White House, Congress, and our governing board of regents. In a statement released in June, the institution said it's committed to ensuring that it remains free from political or partisan influence. The Board of Regents will continue its vigilant, independent oversight of the Smithsonian and its museums to protect their rigorous scholarship and expertise, nonpartisanship, and accuracy, and ensure that the Smithsonian is welcoming to all Americans, the statement said. The Smithsonian has found itself embroiled in an ongoing culture war since Trump took office. Trump's March executive order, Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History, directly criticized the Smithsonian for coming under the influence of a divisive, race-centered ideology and for promoting narratives that portray American and Western values as inherently harmful and oppressive. In May, Trump claimed he was firing Kim Sajat, the director of the Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery. She later resigned of her own accord. In late July, artist Amy Sherrill canceled an upcoming exhibition of her work at the Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery after a dispute over her painting of a transgender woman with pink hair and a blue gown holding a torch, Statue of Liberty style. Despite the requests, and now it's like, okay, saying what is art and what isn't art, like what's allowed. Like art is, you could, especially when it's a painting, it could be really whatever you want it to be. Despite the requests for piles of documentation and interview with Smithsonian Museum staff, Tuesday's letter states the museum review is intended to be a constructive and collaborative effort and that the White House will not interfere with the day-to-day operations of curators or staff. But some commentators say the government has no business interfering with museum processes and decisions. Museums cannot change content to suit a political whim or agenda, said Lisa Strong, a professor of art history at Georgetown University. And I would say it's scary that we needed to call Lisa to give us that sentence, because we should just all know that. Again, let's say it again. Museums cannot change content to suit a political whim or agenda. This is straight up dictator behavior. The best way for museums to maintain the high public trust they already enjoy is by remaining independent. Museums are staffed by experts in their fields who interpret the collection to help educate the public about art, history, science, and culture. Their content should not be reviewed, revised, or edited for political gain. So that's pretty fucking crazy. And then the second thing, which I think goes head to head with the police state in D.C. for the story of the week, is that due to a deal Trump made, we now have 26 high-ranking members of the Mexican cartel in the U.S. Your local florist has been deported, but bake a cake and welcome the Mexican cartel. So this is from the Associated Press. Mexico transfers 26 cartel figures wanted by U.S. authorities in deal with Trump administration. And I went through these with ChatGPT, who is my assistant for the show. I had them go through all 26 members that are being transferred here, and they're basically everyone was serving life in prison. Like, these are bad dudes. Mexico transfers 26 cartel figures wanted by U.S. authorities in deal with Trump administration. And, like, you know, some people may be like, oh, this is like a good deal. But the problem here that, you know, I see and that, you know, I was looking into is that a lot of, you know, kind of experts fear that we don't actually have the prison security to deal with 26 criminals of this high of stature, because they're going to need like a very specific level of security, and it could actually end up like, you know, that we just, you know, if they get out, if they somehow escape, or if they are, you know, they're smart, obviously, if they've gotten to that high rank in the cartel, if they'll be able to engage in criminal activity right here in America from prison, as many people often do. It just does seem like a U.S. security issue. Mexico sent 26 high-ranking cartel figures to the United States Tuesday in the latest major deal with the Trump administration as American authorities ratchet up pressure on criminal networks smuggling drugs across the border. Those handed over to U.S. custody include Abigail Gonzalez Valencia, a leader of Los CUTIES, a group largely aligned with notorious cartel Jalisco New Generation, or CJNG. Another defendant, Roberto Salazar, is wanted in connection to the 2008 killing of a Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputy. Other prominent figures have ties to the Sinaloa cartel and other violent drug trafficking groups. The transfers are a milestone for the Trump administration, which is made dismantling dangerous drug cartels a key Justice Department priority. It's the second time in months that Mexico has expelled cartel figures accused of narcotic smuggling, murder, and other crimes amid mounting pressure from the Trump administration to curb the flow of drugs onto American streets. So I will say that it is like, it could possibly actually be good, but so I don't want to just say because Trump did it, it's bad. It could possibly be good, but it's like, number one, at what price? You know, did we get these guys back? And number two, like, do we have the capacity to keep them incarcerated here in a way that is safe for everyone else? These 26 men have all played a role in bringing violence and drugs to American shores. Under this Department of Justice, they will face severe consequences for their crimes against this country. Attorney General Pam Bondi said in a statement, "We are grateful to Mexico's national security team for their collaboration in this matter." The cartel figures were put on planes to the U.S. after the Justice Department agreed not to seek the death penalty against any of the defendants or against any cartel leaders and members sent to the U.S. in February. That transfer was of 29 cartel figures, including drug lord Rafael Caro Quintero, who was behind the killing of a U.S. DEA agent in 1985. This transfer is yet another example of what is possible when two governments stand united against violence and impunity. U.S. Ambassador to Mexico Ronald Johnson said in a statement, "These fugitives will now face justice in U.S. courts, and the citizens of both of our nations will be safer from these common enemies." The February transfers came as Mexican officials were trying to head off the Trump administration's threat of imposing tariffs on Mexican imports. Late last month, President Donald Trump spoke with Mexico President Claudia Sheinbaum and agreed to put off threatened 30% tariffs for another 90 days to allow for negotiations. Sheinbaum has shown a willingness to cooperate more on security than her predecessor, specifically being more aggressive in pursuit of Mexico's cartels. But she has drawn a clear line when it comes to Mexico's sovereignty, rejecting suggestions by Trump and others of intervention by the U.S. military. Also included in the group expelled Tuesday was Servando Gomez Martinez, also known as La Tuta, a former school teacher who became one of Mexico's most wanted drug lords as head of the Knights Templar cartel. Imagine if that was your teacher. Oh my God, I know him. He was captured in 2015 and sentenced to 55 years in a Mexican prison in June 2019. Gomez led the quasi-religious criminal group that once exercised absolute control over Michoacan. Sorry, I probably mispronounced that. And he liked to appear in interviews and videos. The cartel orchestrated politics, controlled commerce, dictated rules, and preached a code of ethics around devotion to God and family, even as it murdered and plundered. Sounds a lot like the Trump administration, actually. Abigail Gonzalez Valencia is the brother-in-law of CJNG leader Nemesio Ruben El Mencho Aseguera Cervantes, a top target of the U.S. government. Abigail Gonzalez Valencia was arrested in February 2015 in Puerto Vallarta, Jalisco, and had been fighting extradition to the United States since then. The U.S. government has offered a reward of up to $15 million for information leading to El Mencho's arrest or conviction. Alongside his two brothers, Abigail Gonzalez Valencia led Los CUTIES, which financed the founding and growth of the CGNG, one of the most powerful and dangerous cartels in Mexico. CGNG traffics hundreds of tons of cocaine, methamphetamine, and fentanyl into the United States and other countries and is known for extreme violence, murders, torture, and corruption. One of his brothers, Jose Gonzalez Valencia, was sentenced in Washington's federal court in June to 30 years in a U.S. prison after pleading guilty to international cocaine trafficking. Jose Gonzalez Valencia was arrested in 2017 under the first Trump administration at a beach resort in Brazil while vacationing with his family under a fake name. Wow. Some people live in much different lives than us, huh? All right, guys. Well, we still did an extremely long show for you today. So I still delivered even with a migraine. Look at her go. And I think I possibly might do a live reaction. Well, not live, but I mean like a reaction video to the Taylor Swift Travis Kelce, Jason Kelce podcast interview. I'm not sure. I'll see what possibilities lie there, but that was Mike's idea, and I thought it was a good one. So we might be doing that. Stay tuned. I'll let you know on social media if it happens. Thank you so much for being here. Oh, and I forgot because of my headache. I'm sorry. I'll do it at the bottom of the show. But obviously, all hail to our dictator, Christopher Fungi. Hello. Thank you so much for being our dictator. I appreciate you. And if anyone else wants to become a capitalist pig or a cutie, and hello to all my capitalist pigs and cuties, you can head over to patreon.com/withoutaCountry and you can get a subscription, which is one additional video news story every single week for as little as $6. And it helps to finance this show and all the work that we're doing on here. And all the human staff. I have human staff too. I do use ChatGPT as my assistant because it can plow through an incredible amount of research really quickly. But it helps to. I don't pay for that though. I just use the free version. It helps to pay Mike, pay for all the subscriptions we have, and pay our wonderful intern who has been doing great graphic design and creating those chapters for you on YouTube, Crystal. So shout out to Crystal Mavros as well. All right, that's our show for today. Again, please go and vote at that South by Southwest link in the Linktree link in my bio on Instagram and also on X. It takes like 2 minutes, and I really, really appreciate it so much. We have until August 25th for that. And then, Mike, do you have anything else that you would like to promote? Your mic's not on.
Yeah, sorry. It's for some reason it was coming through even when it was muted on my side, so I had to kill it. August 21st, back at New York Comedy Club with Anxiety Attack. Got a very fun lineup this month. And Armored Combat coming up in September and October. Tickets available at thearmoredleague.com.
All right. Thank you so much. Make sure to follow me on all social media at Philanthropy Gal. Make sure to hit subscribe on this YouTube page, youtube.com/without-a-country. Make sure to follow Mike on social media at them Harrington. And remember, the truth is in there. Thank you for your commitment to critical thinking, to being aware of what is happening in America and the world at large, and for being an active citizen. I greatly appreciate it. I think it really matters and makes a difference. And it's when we become apathetic to things that the bad people can really take over. And so, as enticing as it might seem at times to be apathetic towards the state of the world, I commend you on continuing to fight the good fight, as they say. So thank you so much for joining us. Have a great week. Bye.